Question number 1. An auditor concludes that a material uncertainty exists due to pending litigation whose outcome cannot be reasonably estimated. Which of the following types of audit report would most likely be appropriate? Letter A, an adverse opinion. Letter B, a qualified opinion. Letter C, an unmodified opinion with no additional paragraph. Letter D, an unmodified opinion with an emphasis of matter paragraph, or a disclaimer of opinion. Correct answer is letter D. Explanation. Letter D is correct because when a material uncertainty, such as pending litigation, cannot be reasonably estimated, the auditor's response is either an unmodified opinion with an added emphasis of matter paragraph, or, in more severe cases, a disclaimer of opinion. An adverse opinion or a plain qualified opinion don't fit an uncertainty like this, and doing nothing at all would understate how serious the situation is. Question number 2. In the opinion paragraph of a qualified audit report, should the auditor include the phrases, when read in conjunction with Note X, and, with the foregoing explanation? Letter A, both phrases should be included. Letter B, only, when read in conjunction with Note X, should be included. Letter C, only, with the foregoing explanation, should be included. Letter D, neither phrase should be included. Correct answer is letter D. Explanation. Letter D is correct because neither phrase belongs in the opinion paragraph of a qualified report. Professional standards specifically avoid softening language like these cross-references, since a qualified opinion needs to stand as a clear, direct statement rather than being hedged by a vague pointer elsewhere in the report. Question number 3. An auditor dual dates the audit report because of a subsequent event. What is the auditor's responsibility for other subsequent events that might have occurred between the original report date and the later dual date? Letter A, full responsibility extends to the later dual date for all subsequent events. Letter B, full responsibility extends only to the original report date, with no further duty. Letter C, responsibility is limited to the specific event referenced in the financial statement note. Letter D, responsibility depends entirely on materiality, regardless of which date is used. Correct answer is letter C. Explanation. Letter C is correct because dual dating exists precisely to limit the auditor's added responsibility to just the one subsequent event being referenced in the note. If the auditor wanted broader responsibility for anything happening up to the later date, they would simply use that later date for the whole report instead of dual dating. Question number 4. Management commits an illegal act that has a material effect on the financial statements, and the act has not been properly accounted for or disclosed. What type of audit report is appropriate? Letter A, a disclaimer of opinion. Letter B, a qualified opinion or an adverse opinion. Letter C, an unmodified opinion with a separate emphasis of matter paragraph. Letter D, either a disclaimer of opinion or an unmodified opinion with an emphasis of matter paragraph. Correct answer is letter B. Explanation. Letter B is correct because failing to properly account for or disclose a material illegal act is a departure from generally accepted accounting principles, and departures like that call for either a qualified opinion or an adverse opinion, depending on how pervasive the effect is. A disclaimer isn't right here because the auditor already knows about the misstatement, and no unmodified opinion is possible while it remains uncorrected. Question number 5. An entity changes an accounting principle in a way that has an immaterial effect on the current year's financial statements, but the change is expected to have a substantial effect in future years. What should the auditor do regarding this change in the audit report? Letter A, add an emphasis of matter paragraph describing the change and its expected future effect. Letter B, qualify the opinion because the change will materially affect future comparability. Letter C, issue a standard unmodified opinion without recognizing the change in the report. Letter D, disclaim an opinion until the future effect can be reasonably estimated. Correct answer is letter C. Explanation. Letter C is correct because when a change in accounting principle has no material effect on the current year, the auditor doesn't need to say anything about it in the current report, even if the change is expected to matter a great deal in future years. The report only needs to reflect the current year's actual materiality, not a forecast of what might happen later. Question number 6. In which of the following situations would an auditor be unable to issue a qualified opinion, and instead be required to disclaim an opinion? Letter A. The financial statements contain a departure from GAAP. Letter B. The auditor lacks independence with respect to the client. Letter C. The auditor faced a scope limitation in performing procedures. Letter D. The auditor needs to refer to the work of a specialist. Correct answer is letter B. Explanation. Letter B is correct because a lack of independence is a fundamental problem that a qualified opinion cannot fix, no matter how minor the underlying issue might otherwise seem. Independence is a threshold requirement for expressing any opinion at all, so the only appropriate response is to disclaim an opinion entirely. Question number 7. Which phrase would an auditor include in a qualified audit report issued because of inadequate disclosure? Letter A. Subject to the omission of the information discussed above. Letter B. Except as explained in the following paragraph. Letter C. Except for the omission of the information discussed in the basis for qualified opinion paragraph. Letter D. With the exception of the matter described in Note X. Correct answer is letter C. Explanation. Letter C is correct because that specific phrase, tying the qualification directly to the basis for qualified opinion paragraph, is the wording professional standards actually call for. The other options either soften the qualification too much or point to the wrong part of the report. Question number 8. A subsequent event requiring adjustment to the financial statements, but not disclosure of the event itself, comes to the auditor's attention after the original report date but before the report is issued. What date should the auditor use for the audit report? Letter A. The date on which sufficient appropriate audit evidence has been obtained. Letter B. The original date of completion of fieldwork, unchanged. Letter C. A dual date, referencing only the specific subsequent event. Letter D. The date the financial statements were issued to users. Correct answer is letter A. Explanation. Letter A is correct because once a subsequent event requires adjusting the financial statements themselves, rather than just being disclosed in a note, the auditor simply uses the date on which sufficient appropriate evidence was gathered, extending responsibility fully to that date. This is different from disclosure-only subsequent events, where a narrower dual dating approach can be used instead. Question number 9. An audit report includes a separate paragraph, added to an otherwise unmodified opinion, emphasizing that the entity had significant related party transactions. Which of the following is true about this report? Letter A. The report is no longer considered unmodified because of the added paragraph. Letter B. Adding such emphasis violates auditing standards unless disclosed only in the report itself. Letter C. The opinion paragraph should include the phrase, with the foregoing explanation. Letter D. Adding such emphasis does not negate the unmodified opinion. Correct answer is letter D. Explanation. Letter D is correct because adding an emphasis of matter paragraph about related party transactions is simply extra information for the reader. It does not change the fact that the opinion itself remains unmodified, since the underlying financial statements are still fairly presented, and the auditor is just drawing attention to something worth knowing. Question number 10. What should the opinion paragraph of an audit report with an adverse opinion include? Letter A. A full description of the principal effects of the departure from GAAP. Letter B. A direct reference to a separate paragraph disclosing the basis for the adverse opinion. Letter C. A complete description of the substantive reasons for the adverse opinion. Letter D. A statement addressing the uncertainty or scope limitation that caused the adverse opinion. Correct answer is letter B. Explanation. Letter B is correct because in an adverse opinion, the actual reasons and explanation belong in their own separate paragraph, and the opinion paragraph itself just needs to point the reader to that paragraph directly. Cramming the full explanation into the opinion paragraph itself would clutter the one part of the report meant to state the conclusion plainly.